What happens when two of the most outspoken women in media clash in front of millions of viewers? What happens when years of simmering tension finally explode into the most uncomfortable television moment of the decade you're about to witness? Megyn Kelly completely dismantled Meghan Markle in a way that left the entire studio audience speechless and social media absolutely on fire. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a master class in how to expose someone's contradictions live on national television. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below because this story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about media manipulation and public image. The View studio was buzzing with its usual pre-show energy when Megyn Kelly walked onto the set as a guest host for the day. The producers had been promoting this special episode for weeks, knowing that Kelly's non-nonsense approach would bring a different dynamic to the show's typical format. What they didn't anticipate was just how explosive things would become when Meghan Markle arrived as the featured guest to discuss her latest philanthropic endeavors. As Meghan settled into the guest chair, her perfectly crafted smile never wavering, she began her rehearsed talking points about empowerment and social justice. "I've always believed that we have a responsibility to use our platforms for good," Megyn said, her voice carrying that familiar tone of practiced sincerity. "That's why I'm so passionate about my work with various organizations that support women and children around the world." Kelly leaned forward slightly, her journalist instincts already picking up on something. "That's interesting, Megyn. Can you tell us specifically which organizations you're currently working with and what your actual involvement looks like on a day-to-day basis?" The question seemed innocuous enough, but there was something in Kelly's tone that made Megyn pause for just a fraction of a second. "Well, there are several organizations, and I prefer to keep some of my charitable work private because I don't believe in doing good deeds for publicity." "How convenient," Kelly replied with a slight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "So, you're here on national television talking about your charitable work, but you can't actually name the charities or describe what you do for them because you don't want publicity for your good deeds." The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Joy Behar tried to interject with a lighter comment, but Kelly wasn't finished. She had clearly done her homework, and Megyn was about to find out just how thoroughly. "Let me help you out. Here," Kelly continued, pulling out a folder from beside her chair. "I did some research before today's show because I believe our viewers deserve specifics when public figures talk about their philanthropic work. According to public records, the Arawell Foundation, which you and Harry founded, has some interesting financial disclosures." Megyn's composure began to show the first signs of cracking. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Megyn, but everything we do is completely transparent and above board." "I'm not implying anything," Kelly shot back. "I'm stating facts. Your foundation took in over $13 million in donations, but according to your own tax filings, less than 30% of that money actually went to charitable causes. Where did the rest go?" The studio fell silent, except for the hum of cameras. Megyn's media training kicked in as she tried to deflect. "Well, there are administrative costs, and building a foundation requires infrastructure, and we have to pay our staff fair wages." Kelly nodded slowly. "Of course, administrative costs. Your administrative costs included a $200,000 payment to a public relations firm, $300,000 in consulting fees to companies that, interestingly enough, are owned by your personal friends, and nearly $500,000 in travel expenses. That's quite a bit of administration for a foundation that gave away less than $4 million to actual causes." "Those are private business matters," Megyn said, her voice becoming noticeably tighter. "I don't think it's appropriate to discuss financial details on television, but you just spent the first 10 minutes of this interview talking about your commitment to transparency and using your platform responsibly," Kelly fired back without missing a beat. "Which is it, Megyn? Are you transparent about your work, or are your business practices too private to discuss when you're publicly asking people to support your causes?" The other hosts were now completely silent, realizing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Whoopi Goldberg, normally quick to jump in and redirect difficult conversations, seemed frozen as she watched Kelly systematically dismantle Megyn's carefully constructed narrative. Megyn tried a different approach, her voice taking on a slightly wounded tone. "I think it's unfair to attack someone who is genuinely trying to make a difference in the world. I've always been committed to helping others, even before I had any kind of public platform." Kelly's expression remained unchanged. Help me understand that timeline, Megyn. Before you married Harry, what charitable work were you involved in? And please be specific because I have your pre-royal resume right here. I was involved in various causes, Megyn replied vaguely. I worked with organizations focused on women's rights and social justice, such as Kelly Press. Well, there were several, Megyn stammered, clearly unprepared for this level of scrutiny. I don't have the exact names memorized. Kelly opened her folder again. According to your own representatives before your royal engagement, your charitable involvement consisted of one visit to a water charity in Rwanda, which was filmed for publicity purposes, and a few social media posts about various causes. There's no record of regular volunteer work, ongoing financial contributions, or sustained involvement with any charitable organization. So, when you say you've always been committed to helping others, what exactly do you mean? The camera caught Megyn glancing toward the show's producers off stage, clearly looking for some kind of intervention. When none came, she tried to regain control of the narrative. I think what's happening here is that you're trying to diminish the work that I'm doing now because of some personal agenda, Megyn said, her voice rising slightly. This feels like an attack rather than an interview. Kelly leaned back in her chair, completely unfazed. Personal agenda. Megyn, I've never met you before today. I have no personal relationship with you or your family. What I do have is a responsibility to ask the questions that our viewers want answered when public figures come on television asking for their support and money. The tension in the studio was now palpable as Megyn realized she was facing a completely different kind of interviewer than she was accustomed to. Kelly wasn't backing down, and the other hosts seemed paralyzed by the unfolding drama. You know what, Megyn? Megyn said, attempting to regain her footing. I think what's really happening here is that you're uncomfortable with a strong woman who speaks her truth and stands up for what she believes in. Kelly's eyebrows raised slightly, and for the first time since the interview began, she smiled genuinely. Are you seriously trying to play this strong woman card with me, Megyn? I've been in journalism for over 20 years. I've interviewed presidents, covered wars, and faced down some of the most powerful people in the world, asking tough questions, and I've built my career on not backing down from difficult conversations. So, please don't insult both of us by suggesting that I'm intimidated by anyone in this room. The audience, which had been remarkably quiet, began to murmur. Some were clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation, while others seemed energized by Kelly's direct approach. Megyn's carefully maintained composure continued to slip. This is exactly the kind of treatment that I've had to deal with from the media for years. The constant questioning, the refusal to take my word at face value, the need to pick apart everything I say. Welcome to being a public figure, Kelly responded immediately. You ask for people's money and support. When you make claims about your work and your character, you get questioned. That's not persecution, that's accountability. But it's different for me, Megyn protested. You know, it's different for me because of who I am and what I represent. Kelly paused, studying Megyn carefully. What exactly do you represent, Megyn? Because I'm genuinely curious about your answer. I represent change, progress, a new way of thinking about service and duty and using your platform responsibly, Megyn replied, her voice gaining strength as she moved into familiar territory. Calm but pointed, anyone can say they represent change and progress. What I'm asking about is your actual record. What specific changes have you implemented? What measurable progress have you achieved? Because from where I'm sitting looking at the facts, it seems like you're very good at talking about change, but not so good at actually creating it. Joy. Beer finally found her voice. Megyn, don't you think you're being a little harsh here? Kelly turned to face Joy directly. My Joy, if someone came on this show claiming to be a doctor, but couldn't explain basic medical procedures, would you call it harsh to question their credentials? If someone said they were a teacher but couldn't name a single student they'd taught, would that be unfair scrutiny? Megyn has built her entire post-royal brand on being a philanthropist and activist. But when asked for specifics about her work, she can't provide them. Whoopi finally jumped in, but Megyn has been very open about her experiences and her commitment to making a difference. Being open about your experiences is not the same as being effective in your work. Kelly countered. Oprah was open about her experiences, but she also built schools and created scholarships and can point to thousands of lives she's directly impacted. Ellen was open about her experiences, but she also donated millions of dollars of her own money to causes she believed in. What has Megyn actually accomplished beyond talking about her intentions? Megyn's face was now noticeably flushed. I don't think I should have to justify my work to someone who clearly has already made up her mind about me. I haven't made up my mind about anything, Kelly said firmly. That's exactly why I'm asking these questions. I came here today with an open mind, ready to learn about your work and your impact. But every question I ask gets met with deflection, vague answers, or accusations that I'm being unfair. If you have real accomplishments, real impact, real results from your work, then share them. Help me understand why people should support you. The camera caught Megyn looking down at her hands, clearly struggling with how to respond. When she looked back up, there was a different quality to her expression, something harder and more defensive. You want specifics, Megyn said, her voice taking on an edge. Fine. Through my work, I've raised awareness about issues that matter. I've used my platform to shine a light on problems that were being ignored. I've given a voice to people who didn't have one. Kelly nodded. Okay. That's a start. Can you give me one specific example of a problem that was being ignored until you brought attention to it? There are many examples, Megyn replied. Just one, Kelly pressed. One specific issue that wasn't getting attention until you spoke about it. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity in television time. Megyn opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. The other hosts exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the extended pause. I think, Megyn finally said, that what's happening here proves my point about how women, especially women like me, are treated when we try to do good work in the world. Kelly leaned forward again. Megyn, stop. Just stop. This isn't about gender. This isn't about race. This isn't about being treated unfairly. This is about basic accountability. I asked you a simple question. Give me one example of an issue you brought to public attention. You can't answer it because the truth is you haven't actually brought any new issues to light. You've talked about issues that were already being discussed by other people who were doing the actual work. That's not true, Megyn said. But her voice lacked conviction. Then prove me wrong, Kelly challenged. Right now on live television. Give me one example, just one. The studio was so quiet that the sound of the cameras seemed amplified. Every person in the audience was leaning forward, waiting to see how this would play out. Megyn looked around the room as if searching for an escape route that didn't exist. The silence became unbearable. Megyn's eyes darted between the cameras, the hosts, and the audience, clearly realizing that her usual deflection tactics weren't working against Kelly's relentless pursuit of facts. Finally, she spoke, but her voice was barely above a whisper. Mental health, she said. I brought attention to mental health issues. Kelly tilted her head slightly. Mental health was already a major topic of public discussion before you ever spoke about it. Princess Diana spoke about it decades ago. Prince William and Harry had already launched multiple mental health initiatives before you joined the royal family. Celebrities like Demi Lovato, Lady Gaga, and Robin Williams had been openly discussing mental health for years. So, how exactly did you bring new attention to this issue? Megyn's composure finally cracked completely. You know what, Megyn? I don't have to sit here and be interrogated like I'm some kind of criminal. I came here to talk about my work, not to be attacked by someone who clearly has issues with me personally. There it is, Kelly said, sitting back in her chair with an expression of satisfaction. When you can't answer the questions, when you can't provide the evidence, when you can't back up your claims with facts, you attack the person asking the questions. You accuse them of having personal issues or hidden agendas. It's the oldest trick in the book, Megyn. And frankly, I expected better from someone who claims to be as smart and sophisticated as you do. Sunani host tried to intervene. Maybe we should move on to a different topic. No, Kelly said firmly. We're not moving on because this is exactly the problem. Every time Megyn gets asked tough questions, people rush to protect her, to change the subject, to make excuses for why she can't provide straight answers. And that's not helping her. It's enabling her. Megyn stood up from her chair, her microphone still attached. I don't have to listen to this. Actually, you do, Kelly said, not moving from her seat. You agreed to come on this show. You signed the contracts. You cashed the check. And more importantly, you owe it to the people who have donated money to your foundation and supported your causes to answer these questions. They deserve to know where their money went and what impact their support actually had. My impact can't be measured in spreadsheets and statistics, Megyn said, her voice rising. Sometimes the most important work is about changing hearts and minds, about inspiring people, about showing them what's possible. Kelly finally stood up, facing Megyn directly. That's beautiful rhetoric, Megyn, but it's meaningless. Hearts and minds don't get changed by inspiring Instagram posts and vague speeches about empowerment. They get changed by real action, by real sacrifice, by people who do the hard work day after day without cameras following them around. You don't know anything about sacrifice, Megyn shot back. You don't know what I've given up, what I've endured, what I've faced. You're right, Kelly said. I don't know what you've sacrificed, but I do know what you've gained. You've gained fame, wealth, influence, and platform that most people could never dream of having. And when someone is given that much, when they benefit that much from public support, they have a responsibility to use it effectively. Not just to talk about using it effectively, but to actually do it. The audience was completely captivated. Now, some nodding in agreement with Kelly, others clearly sympathetic to Megyn. The division in the room was palpable. Megyn took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain her composure. I think what's really happening here is that you're threatened by women who don't fit into traditional boxes, who challenge the status quo, who refuse to be silenced. Kelly laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Megyn, I've spent my entire career not fitting into traditional boxers. I've been called every name in the book for asking tough questions and refusing to back down. The difference between us is that when people challenge me, I can point to my work. I can show you the stories I've broken, the corruption I've exposed, the powerful people I've held accountable. I don't hide behind inspirational language and victim narratives. So now I'm playing the victim, Megyn asked, her voice incredulous. You tell me, Kelly replied. Every time someone asks you a direct question, you find a way to make it about how you're being mistreated. Every time someone asks for evidence of your impact, you change the subject to how difficult your life has been. Every time someone points out inconsistencies in your story, you accuse them of having personal issues with you. What would you call that? The other hosts were now openly uncomfortable, but none of them seemed willing to interrupt what had become a masterclass in confrontational journalism. Kelly had Megyn completely cornered, and everyone in the studio knew it. I came here to talk about important issues, Megyn said, her voice now shaking with emotion. Issues that affect real people that matter to communities around the world. Instead, you've turned this into some kind of personal attack. No, Megyn Kelly said, her voice becoming gentler, but no less firm. I came here to talk about important issues, too. I came here to talk about accountability and philanthropy. I came here to talk about the responsibility that comes with having a platform. I came here to talk about the difference between talking about change and actually creating it. Those are important issues that affect real people who donate their hard-earned money to causes they believe in. Megyn sat back down clearly defeated. I think we have very different ideas about what constitutes meaningful work. Maybe we do, Kelly agreed. But the people watching at home, the people who support your foundation, the people who look up to you as a role model, they deserve to know what your idea of meaningful work actually looks like in practice. They deserve specifics, not just inspiring speeches. The show was clearly running over time, but no one seemed willing to call cut. This was television gold, the kind of raw, unscripted moment that would be talked about for years. Finally, Whoopi found her voice. Well, this has certainly been an enlightening conversation. Kelly turned to face the camera directly. I think the most important thing for viewers to remember is that when public figures ask for your support, your money, your trust, you have every right to ask them tough questions. You have every right to demand accountability. Don't let anyone convince you that asking for evidence and specifics is somehow unfair or inappropriate. The people doing real meaningful work in the world aren't afraid of those questions because they have real answers. As the show finally went to commercial, Megyn sat in her chair looking stunned while Kelly calmly gathered her papers. The studio audience was buzzing with conversation and the other hosts looked like they weren't sure what had just happened. What do you think was the most devastating moment in this confrontation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe for more stories about what happens when public figures face real accountability.